Hello, everybody. This is Amy Schrank. I am creator of Redesigning Motherhood, a 16-week VIP program for moms looking to reclaim their energy, to reconnect with themselves, and to restore a sense of happiness to their journey. I am so excited for today's interview. I've done a couple interviews in the past. It's been a while, but this one I am just so excited about. I have with me today Jana Beeman. Not only is she a friend, she's a colleague, and she is a mentor and teacher to me. And I am just really, really thrilled with what she's going to be sharing with us today about boundaries and energy work, and to dive deep into that. I just wanted to let you guys know a little bit about where she comes from. She is a board certified holistic health and wellness coach. She's also a certified master business and success coach, and is on the faculty at the International School of Wellness Professionals, which is where I got my certification. She's there as a master coach trainer. So she's worked with me as I've gotten my master coach certification. She's had a heavy hand in that and has done a wonderful, wonderful job there. Jana also has a 40-year background in meditation, hypnosis, yoga, energy work, and she holds many certifications in different personal developmental modalities. Definitely, she is well-versed in all kinds of therapies, and I get to see and work on and get little glimpses of some of that as we've done our work together. So I'm excited to share with you some of that as you get to know her today. She does have a diverse background. She loves to help people push past their fears, their blocks, and their obstacles, and to achieve a lifestyle that they've always dreamed of. And that is, I really feel like, the essence of coaching, and so much today, and life coaching in particular. She does such a wonderful job at that. So thank you so much, Jana, for being here today.
Of course.
Excited to have your expertise. So I just mentioned that you have this incredibly robust background in holistic health, in hypnosis and energy work. And I would just love to hear and have you share a little bit about how you came to be fascinated and entrenched in this line of work.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story, because when I was 7, I was hit by a drunk driver on my bike. And I landed face down on the curb. I shattered my jaw and a lot of my permanent teeth. I broke my kneecap, and I broke the 3 little triangular bones at the top of my spine. And from that day forward, I had really debilitating migraines, about 25, 27 days a month, every single month. And on a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably 25 most days. And they would sometimes continue for many, 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 many days at a time without a break. I think the longest one I tracked was about 72 days without a break from the pain. And because of that, and because, going to doctors, I really got no relief, and the drugs made me sicker, and I had to function. I had to have a life. And so by the time I was a fairly young teen, I started with meditation. And I went from meditation to, in my early 20s, I found hypnosis. And I think I found biofeedback before that. And so biofeedback, hypnosis, NLP, EFT, Sedona method, the Silva Life method. Back then it was Silva Mind Control, but same thing. And one technology after another, after another, after another. And the thing was, is they actually helped. And I went from being completely at the mercy of my pain to being able to function and hold a day job and go to college. And, I had moved out of the house when I was 12, so I had to be self-supporting in some way. And you kind of just need as much control as you can get when your life is controlled by pain. So that's kind of how I got there. And then it became a bit of just a fascination for me. I've been a therapist. I have been a licensed practitioner, and I've gone through a lot of different incarnations of career over my lifetime, and am now doing my PhD actually on fear and success. So it's just something that has continued to fascinate me over time.
Very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. I cannot even imagine. And I I love hearing, you know, that it's worked for you. And so kind of the fascination that's come, and you wanted to, it sounds like, understand why it was working, and kind of begin to really understand how it could transform your experience so drastically. And it sounds like there are lots of different things that have been helpful along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I, you know, kind of what I wanted to talk about today with my moms. So one of the things you and I've talked a little bit about, I've been doing a series with my group on how to really reclaim misdirected energy. It's been my experience. I spent kind of differently from you, but spent many, many years pretty darn sure that I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I had every test run under the book, was working with medical, but could never find an answer for why I was so fatigued. And really, when I started working with the International School of Wellness Professionals, and I was working with my own coach during that time, I had this really pivotal moment of recognizing that it was really the lifestyle, or the way in which I was kind of approaching my life and the world, and the thinking patterns that I had behind that, that were causing me to be so tired all of the time. And so I really honed in on some very particular aspects. So we've been talking this week about, or in the last few weeks, we've been talking about, you know, how earning your worth can really be draining and depleting, and how not having healthy boundaries can be very draining and depleting, and how, you know, just even patterns of negative thinking can be really depleting and draining, and how when we move away from that, we free up some of that energy. So I would just love to hear from you. I guess first and foremost, I want to focus on boundaries and the relationship between boundaries and energy. But to start with, you know, from your perspective and your background, would you just define what a healthy boundary is for the audience?
And I would say a lot of people have none, which can be an interesting thing. So a healthy boundary is really a way that you protect yourself, you protect your energy. And, you know, I talk about boundaries a lot in business. So let me describe a little bit about that, and then we can talk about how we can apply that to daily life. So as a business coach, I work with a lot of very highly sensitive practitioners that are starting a business, and they might be a work at home mom, for example. And so a work at home mom will put kids first every single time, and justifiably so. But in order to have a business, you have to have some dedicated time. So creating a healthy boundary would be, you know, carving out some time out of the day when, if the kids are home, maybe you put a sign on the door that says, unless the house is burning down or somebody's screaming, don't disturb me, right? So maybe it's making an agreement with the spouse to get some support if you have that ability, or maybe it's, you know, having a play date once a week where the kids can go to somebody else's house and you can be home by yourself. So whatever it is, it's finding those boundaries. And I think kind of translating that from the business aspect, I think a lot of moms are so used to being in caregiver role, and they don't put themselves on their to-do list at all. It's not even that they're way down the list, they just don't even make it. And so the kids come first, then the relationship, then the house, and then, you know, driving kids from one place to another place to another place to another place. And what I've seen as a pattern is most moms never say no. And there are times when no is the most appropriate answer, because it gets to the point where it can be the straw that broke the camel's back, right? So in order to be a good caregiver, if that's your primary job, you have to take care of yourself, because what happens when you fall apart and nobody else is used to taking care of anything, then, you know, you're left to fend for yourself when you're sick or injured or whatever. And there's just no balance in that.
Absolutely. Actually, I'm going to fast forward, because I think this is a great time to segue into, I had connected with my audience prior to our interview, and I had just ask them to chime in, like if they had time with you, like what would be some of the
Mhm.
questions that they would want to ask you. And I had one mom, and she just says, I mean, kind of exactly what you're talking about. She says, as a mom and as a giver, at one point in my life, I thought that if I had time for self-care, that that would be enough. And that would be a good understanding of a healthy boundary. So she was kind of saying, well, what is the definition of self-care? She says, and then how can you tell, you know, she was really struggling with this idea of self-care versus being selfish. Like, where does the line get drawn there? And moms have this big fear, right? Because I think one of the
Mhm.
things that my mission as a coach is to kind of shift the paradigm that we go into motherhood with. I think the culture
Right.
says that we're supposed to be always selfless, caring, and available. And that if you
Mm.
achieve that, you're a good mother. Well, it's completely unrealistic. And so I'm really trying to help people shift the paradigm and say, okay, it's when we unapologetically invest in ourselves
Yes.
and take care of ourselves that we can then give authentically from the bottom of our heart and give in the way that we want to give. When we're giving on an empty tank, we're resentful, we're moody, we're irritable, we're tired. And so I think if we can shift this paradigm and really reverse it, I think our families will thrive, you know, first and
Mhm.
foremost. So kind of going back to her question, can you kind of talk about self-care? What is that definition? And then how do we kind of determine where we cross the line from self-care into selfishness?
Okay. And, so I'll go back to the analogy of, if you're on an airplane and it loses cabin pressure, they tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first and then help your kids or other people around you, right? What happens as givers is we give until there's nothing left, and then we suffer, sometimes for years, getting back into balance. Now, for some people, it's for a week or 2 weeks, and maybe it shows up in the form of the flu or an accident or just a stress-related, burst of insomnia or whatever it might be. Our bodies are going to require that at some point in time we take care of them properly. So if everybody else comes first and you're not even on your list, that it's not even selflessness. I honestly think it's more like self-imposed slavery. It is not helpful. This is when we go into martyr mode, right? This is when we give everything to others because we feel that we don't deserve anything for ourselves. And of course, that's completely not true. So how do you find that healthy boundary? Well, you need to give yourself a certain amount of time. You need to give yourself a certain amount of attention. And that's going to vary pretty much from person to person. But I would say that at the very least, you need to have time to do a few things for yourself that make you feel grounded, centered, and the best version of yourself that you can manage. Because if what you're wanting to do is give the best version of you to your family, then how do you do that if you're not your best version? So, taking a spa day, going and getting a massage, and doing even things that don't cost anything. Lots of things that you can do, giving yourself a facial. If you're at home cleaning the house anyway, you can multitask it, and that's okay. But I also really think it's important to take some downtime and some quality alone downtime, whether you go for a walk in nature and recharge, or maybe you listen to music and read for a little while. Those things are important. They feed the soul, and when the soul is fed, everything else falls into alignment. And so, if you're spending all day, every day out shopping and going out with the girls and maybe being a little overly self-indulgent, I would say maybe you've crossed that line into, I'm not going to call it selfish, because I think that's a really overused and really misunderstood word that people throw at each other for really stupid and random reasons. But how about we say that too much becomes a little bit too self-indulgent, And we usually can tell. Our inner compass is going to tell us if we've gone too far.
So,
Now, if we're in martyr mode, if we're in martyr mode, then anything is going to feel self-indulgent.
mhm,
So if we have spent, years just only doing for others and not doing for ourselves, that's just not right.
mhm,
And so there needs to be a balance there. And I think that's going to be stretching that comfort zone a little bit over time,
mhm,
because if we jump too far into the other side, then that can almost become either like the guilty pleasure. And if there's guilt, then there's no value, because you're not really restoring yourself and you're not really honoring yourself. But having those moments when you just feel like, I feel like I really need a break, and I'm going to take myself out to lunch and I'm going to have a glass of wine or whatever. Is that self-indulgent? No, that is self-care. So I think it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, but I think you'll know when too much is too much. And I definitely know that if you're in martyr mode, and it's what I call scullery maid mode, if there's any resentment, if there's any of the, I'll just do it myself because nobody ever does it right, or I'll just do it myself because nobody else ever does it, or I have to do this again.
mhm,
That's scullery maid mode. That is martyr syndrome. So if you're in that, that's not healthy for your family.
right.
And so really just taking a breath and saying, okay, great. I get to take care of my family, and I choose to do that to the best of my ability. And I also get to take care of myself, and I choose to do that to the best of my ability as well. So
Mhm.
it should be a balance.
Absolutely. I think that you bring up such a good point. The martyr mode is definitely something that I personally experienced, and I see it with so many women. And I think our culture kind of sets us up
Mm,
to be that way. I know that that was my mother to a T. It's my stepmother to a T. Like they just kind of overdo everything. And again, I think it comes back to that idea that we're trying to earn our worth, right? We're trying to
yes, yes.
think that if we do this, this, and this, and this, then we'll be valuable to society or to our family members or whatever. So with boundaries, though, this is one of the things that I struggled with personally, and I think that so many of my clients do as well, and so many of the mothers that I speak with, that so we might recognize that we need to shift things. We get that. Like, I think at some level you reach a level of dysfunction inside yourself, or just within your family, and you get to start recognizing that some work needs to be done. So then we start asking for support, or we start really trying to honor our boundaries. We start to hear and feel the resentment, and we say, okay, my big question in those moments is, what is it that I need to receive in this moment? And kind of using
Mm-hmm.
the inner guidance system to guide me. Okay, I need a break right now, so I'm going to take a break. So, but then sometimes we feel guilty, so we run up against the guilt. That's one piece. And I think the other piece is, if we're asking for support from someone who's in our family, or we're asking them to step up and take over something that maybe we've always done for them, they might give us pushback, and then we
Mm-hmm.
renege on our boundaries because we're so uncomfortable with that pushback or with their
Right.
emotions. So can you maybe speak a little bit about, I think, A, the guilt, and then B, how do we navigate that pushback?
Okay. So there are two truly useless emotions in the world. And
I love where this is going.
guilt is definitely one of them. And oh my gosh, I just lost my other word. I'll come back to that in a second because it'll pop back in as soon as I'm not trying to think of it. Worry. See, works every time. So guilt and worry are the two most useless emotions that have ever been brought onto the planet, and they have been generated by generations of people who use guilt as a form of manipulation. And the thing is that in this day and age, we get to make choices, and we get to really operate from that place of choice. So if you choose to be a full-time stay-at-home mom and you choose to do it well, that's awesome. If you choose to be a stay-at-home mom, but you choose to maybe have a side business, or you choose to maybe have some other activities, and that's understood within your family dynamic, that's awesome. And so anytime that someone tries to make you feel guilty, that's manipulation. And guilt is a useless emotion. So the one thing that we always have control of, we can't always control others, we can't always control, our mother's behavior, our in-laws' behavior, or even our kids when they're trying to manipulate us into giving them something that they want. But we can always control our response to it. So you can take the power back around your emotions and really think about, okay, I see what's going on here. I see that they're trying to manipulate me because they want A, B, or C. And I can choose how I want to deal with A, B, and C. And I can also choose how I respond to that guilt. I can go into the, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean, oh my gosh, I've been so selfish, right? Or we could go into scullery maid mode. It's like, I'll just do it myself. It's okay, right? Or we could just stay in, okay, I see that you're trying to make me feel guilty about this, and I choose not to because I really think I was doing something valuable for myself and for the family. And the only way that I can be truly present for the family is to be truly present for myself. And that's what I was trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what the A, B, and C is that we need to talk about, but don't try to make me feel guilty because I refuse.
Mm-hmm. What about self-inflicted guilt? Because I feel like so much of it is self-inflicted. Yes. I feel like definitely we can interpret little things from our spouses sometimes, or our children or whatever, mm-hmm. making us feel guilty. But oftentimes I feel like it's more we already feel guilty, and then there's a little punch or a little jab, and mm-hmm. so we're like, meh. Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about how to navigate that self-inflicted guilt, and how do we overcome that?
Okay, so some of it is our attachment to drama. And when we're attached to drama, then it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so guilty. And it becomes part of our story, and we get to blow it up, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of it is tied into self-worth and self-judgment. Mm-hmm. And, one thing I'm going to speak to, and it really doesn't matter what your spiritual philosophy is, but let's just say that God, the universe, spirit, divine energy, whatever you want to call it, does not make mistakes. And that if we are here to express our aspect of God out into the world, then how can we be wrong to do so? We are not, too fat, too ugly, too lazy, too this, too that, to the other thing, unless we are not living up to a true expression of our potential. That would be the difference there. So if we are expressing ourselves as, a great mom and a very, intentional mom and a very intentional person, and people are still trying to put stuff on us, or we're trying to put stuff on ourselves, that is perception. Mm-hmm. And I think most of it does come from the inside. Mm-hmm. It's like the first time a new business owner gets an email saying, oh, I really hated what you wrote and I'm unsubscribing from your email list. And we get the stabbing feeling to our hearts. And it's like, oh my gosh, I did such a horrible thing. I'm such a horrible person. It's like, is that real? No. That was one person's perception, and they were probably not the right person to be in our following anyway. So how can we look at that in the same way with, the mom issue is that we perceive injury where no injury is intended. And that comes back to self-worth and the lens that we view ourselves through. And I will tell you that people have a million layers of lenses. Mm-hmm. Some of it is laid on us from society. Some could even be from our very local community, our church group, our family dynamics for sure, our parents and upbringing, our history, and most of it is just garbage. So if you choose to look through all the distorted lenses, you're always going to see injury and guilt and worry and self-judgment. But if you look at something and then you reflect back in and say, is that the truth about me? And you really look at it from that deep self-knowing place, you're going to see that it is not true, and it's all about either the world reflecting your self-worth back at you, or the world reflecting their own judgments at you. Mm-hmm. And so again, then we have the choice. Do we take this in and let it wound us, or do we choose to move forward and really just breathe through it and say, okay, that is not about me. Right. You know? So there are some ways of looking at it through a clearer lens that I think can be really helpful.
Absolutely. It really sounds like you're talking about shedding layers and layers and layers of limiting beliefs, which I feel like is our journey on this earth. It's like, you know, for me, I think the biggest vehicles, like motherhood has helped me. I think we all have different motivators, things that motivate us to overcome these limiting beliefs. You know, I mean, you went through kind of the experience that you shared with us as a child, and you've had, I know, just from our own conversations, lots of other little things along the way that have kind of motivated you to overcome these pieces of your story. And I feel like my children for me, my husband for me, it's all been, as hard as it's been at times, it's like they're showing me the way. And every time we go through one of these meltdowns or periodic layers or times of difficulty, and I come out the other side, it's like I've usually shed another layer. I've looked at another limiting belief, or I've recognized another layer of a limiting belief that I have. Like for me, the worth one is one that like I constantly come back to. It's like, oh, there it is again. Like I thought I had moved through, then it'll show up again in some other realm of my life, and it's like, okay, I gotta do that. So I just think that's what it's all about. And it's, I've read different things about like enlightenment and is it real or whatever, but I feel like it is like these little just pieces of stepping into our power, if you will.
Yeah. And so you can look at it this way too. As a child, when we are first born onto the planet and we start exploring, we are very unlimited beings. We have no sense of restriction. We have no boundaries, you know. It's like anything is open for us. And then it is society and parents and schools and all of that start to compress us down and make us feel like less than. Now, some of that we need because it helps us keep our hands off of hot stove burners and things like that. And some of it is just about other people's junk that they pile on our heads. So the thing is, we can choose to be really formed by that as an adult. We have a choice. We don't have to be that. And so if we choose something different and we're constantly looking to become the highest version of ourselves that we possibly can, the other layers will start popping up so that we can chip them off and leave that behind and really strive to be, you know, a force of nature in the world, because I think that's really what everybody is here to be. And we've come up with these constructs and these paradigms that we try to shove ourselves into. We try to box ourselves up. And, you know, most of us are not square shaped. We don't fit in boxes very well. And so when we learn to blow the walls out, that's when we learn how to be completely fully expressed beings. And there is nothing selfish in that, by the way. That is really what we're here to attain, and what better role model for your children.
Absolutely. So coming back to this idea of boundaries and energy. So I think having healthy boundaries, self-care is a piece of that. I think really understanding what emotions are ours and what's our story and what it is that we need to work through versus what is somebody else's junk, like you kind of said.
Yes.
Another part of that. Can you, in your kind of expert opinion, can you talk about this relationship? Because I'm just such a firm believer from my own personal experience and from what I've seen with my clients is that when we begin to really invest in self-care appropriately. And when we begin to really understand what's ours and what's not ours, we really invite energy into our lives. Like we expand, we feel less drained and depleted. Can you talk about why that is? How does that all work? Because it feels a little magical, a little mythical.
Mm-hmm. Well, I honestly think that when we invest in ourselves, we get a huge return on that investment. So, self-care can be anything from, giving yourself a facial to just feel a little bit prettier or a little bit pampered. Or, it could be taking a week's vacation by yourself. It depends on how depleted you are and what you need, right? Um, so basically, when you're investing back into yourself, you're going to get a great kind of sense of importance in your own life. I think that's the word, is to feel important in your own life. There is nobody on this planet, nobody, zip, zero, no exceptions. There is nobody on this planet who was put here just to serve and be a slave to others. And I've been a caregiver almost my entire life, but I also knew that sometimes I had to ask for help. I had to have a support system. I had to have some place to vent about how tired and frustrated and exhausting the whole process was. And I need to be able to do that without being judged, you know? And then there were those moments where it's like, okay, I have just had a horrendous day. I am treating myself to candles and wine and a bubble bath because I need it. I just need it. And so when you know that you've reached that place, that's when giving back to yourself can be especially powerful. So, energetically speaking, and I'm going to get into a little bit of metaphysical languaging here, so bear with me. But so if you see yourself as surrounded by a bubble, and that bubble is energy, other people attach their energy webs to you, and you attach your energy webs to other people. We have these attachments, and they're almost like an umbilical cord, right? They go from our energy center to the energy center of others. So almost everyone I look at, if they're married, they have those connections with their spouse. Now, does that help their relationship? Actually, no. It actually can be very destructive. Most people have that with their kids. Do they need to have it with their kids? Actually, no. Now, what I'm saying is that the energy webs that we send out, these little strings that we attach onto others, we have a tendency as humans, for one reason or another, to use that energy connection to either draw energy from others, manipulate them, try to influence them in some way, get them to do what we want them to do. They almost never serve a good purpose. And without those energy attachments, we can still be aware of what our kids or our spouse is feeling. We can still be aware when there's something wrong. There's none of that connection that's gone when these energy attachments have been removed. Now, what happens as we go through life and we're unaware of our energy field is there are more and more of these attachments. Some we allow, some we don't even know are there. And it can be from somebody we pass in the grocery store who just says, oh, she has great energy. And somewhere in their psyche, there's a thing that says, I want some of that. Mm-hmm. And they start drawing that from you, because if you're not aware of it to clear it off, it's very easy for others to attach to you because you're there to serve. That's your only purpose, right? So there's some people that I refer to as psychic vampires who really do suck the energy out of people. You've been around them. Almost at every PTA meeting, there's one person that just pulls all of the energy out of the room, and people leave there feeling exhausted and frazzled, and it's like, why was that so hard?
Right.
That's managing energy, right? You go to a party, same thing. You go to a big barbecue for, you know, your husband's company or whatever. There's going to be somebody there who does that. And it may not even be intentional on any conscious level at all. It may just be that's how they grew up, that's what they learned how to do, that's how they survive. And if we can't find ways to protect ourselves from that and to clear off those energy attachments from time to time, we get more and more drained and more unwell and more frazzled and stressed. And, you know, so that when you were talking about the adrenal fatigue and the other things in the beginning, these are some things that can really contribute to that. And it's something that no doctor will ever be able to diagnose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was sort of my intention with touching on this. I feel like the first thing that we do when we're struggling with our energy is we go look at all the physical reasons. And I'm not saying that those don't play a part. They do. I think it's all intertwined for sure. But these are the pieces that often can create some of the biggest shifts for us. When we look at these kind of unorthodox or undetected, you know, people just don't think to look at like, okay, well, do you have healthy boundaries? You know, or you know, are you running the hamster wheel trying to earn your worth, or are you in, you know, a cycle where you're just destroying yourselves with your own thinking and thoughts and stories, limiting beliefs, whatever it is. So I just love what you share there. And oh my gosh, I feel like we've all been in that room with that vampire. I was curious. The one thought that I had, and I don't even know that I have my question articulated very well in regards to this, but I kept thinking as you were describing that, so many of my moms are introverted or highly sensitive or empaths. How does that, like, boundaries can be tricky, I feel like, when we're dealing with those, I guess, are there character traits, personality traits?
They're just traits of our essence, I think, is a kind of a good way to look at it. And being highly sensitive, most highly sensitive people that are pretty far over on the spectrum are empathic, may or may not be aware of it. Most people who are highly sensitive really are open to the attachments of others. And also, sometimes highly sensitive people can go through very needy times in their life, and they may attach to a lot of other people. It's not that it's conscious, it's just that it happens, right? You know, it's one of those things where highly sensitives are just more prone to, first of all, we're service-oriented people. We tend to put others first. We tend to go into either scullery maid mode, or the other side of the realm is the entitled princess. Why should I have to do that? Why can't you do that? You know? And sometimes we swing between those two paradigms. So
depending on our cycle.
Yeah. And so it's really about finding the balance. So somewhere in the middle of explaining that, I lost the point I was trying to make. So can you repeat your question or where we were going with that?
Well, it wasn't very well articulated. I was just really thinking about how difficult I think boundaries are for people who are introverted. Like I kept envisioning when you were talking about the vampire, you know, it's like when I go to a social gathering, I might not to that person, but I might come home wholly depleted and drained. I am a very social person. I love going to parties, but I come home and I need, you know, to go straight to bed. And I need extra sleep the next day. So, you know, and I feel like a lot of the moms that I work with are either, you know, similar introverted that way, or, you know, they are highly sensitive. So the whole children thing, take on our children's emotions or their discomfort, our discomfort. Or when they're hurting, and you know, it's like I have a hard time making, I feel like sometimes the right decisions for my children, or helping them make the right decisions because I'm not making their decisions. But because I get so caught in, I know what they need as far as a boundary goes sometimes, or where I need to have my boundary, but then I hurt for them so much because I can totally see why they're upset. And does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, so a couple of things there. First of all, highly sensitives tend to be introverts. If we do something social, it drains us. It energizes us in the moment, but it drains us after the fact. There's nearly always a backlash depending on how highly sensitive and introverted we are. And introverts and highly sensitive people tend to recharge either in nature or in solitude or in silence. So when you do a very social thing, let's say you do that company barbecue and you're being, the social butterfly and having a great time, the next day might be a total meltdown day. I just want to sit on the couch and watch movies. That's really all I want to do, and so whatever that is for you, it's just starting to acknowledge your patterns and deciding to be okay with that, because that is part of how highly sensitives refill their energy bucket, is in that silence and just being able to be on their own a little bit. Now, you can watch a movie with the whole family in the room, and that doesn't really take away from the recharge, because we recharge at home doing what we want to do. And I think most of us are recharged by having family around as well. Even though we tend to recharge best in solitude, most of us really enjoy that family connection. So it's not like you have to shut the family out in order to do it. So it's just starting to recognize your patterns. If you are more energized by social situations and you just want to have more and more and more of that, that probably means that you are a little bit less highly sensitive and a little bit more of an extrovert. And there are mixes all over the place of personality types. So just because maybe you're very empathic when it comes to your kids, but you're very, very social and you thrive in social situations and they don't drain you, so you could be a little highly sensitive on one side and very extroverted on the other. They're not mutually exclusive. There's, about 1,000 shades of gray in there. So the other thing that I heard in there is the compassion for, a child going through something. And one thing that I think is really important to consider is that if you feel their pain with them, then A, you are not allowing them to move past it, and kids tend to transition through emotion faster than adults do. So if we tap into where they are, we may stay there much longer than they do. So we're actually adding to their pain and making them stay in that. And two, it really is not as helpful to have somebody be in it with you as it is to have someone who is a little bit more of the compassionate, objective observer. So, instead of going, oh my God, honey, you must be feeling so bad. Oh, that's so horrible. Oh, I feel so bad for you. And actually kind of making it worse and almost taking on their drama, which some of us do because some of us really like drama. What about just saying, I understand how you feel. We've all been there. And tell me how that's feeling for you. And just be the listener. Let them express it, let them move past it, and let them draw their own conclusions without it being all about us. Because honestly, if they're hurting, it should be all about them. And we should just be that objective observer, but in that compassion and connection and in the mom role, totally, but not going into it with them. And the other piece of advice that comes up for me here that I think it's really important to share is that it's very important to let people feel their own pain. As empaths, as caregivers, as highly sensitives, we have a tendency to want to protect people from pain. If they don't experience their own pain, they don't grow, they don't evolve, they don't excel. And stunting people's growth is not helpful. That's where I think being highly sensitive actually becomes selfish, because we are trying so hard to protect them that we take away something that has value for them. So when you have a reaction to something going on in your family, really think about, is my reaction about what they're going through, or is my reaction about me?
Mhm. That's a great question. A really great question. As you've been talking about that, I mean, I'm literally playing out scenarios in my mind of like where this has transpired between my daughter and I.
Mhm.
Where, you know, you said they're so much quicker to move through it. Like we will have, you know, moment, a dramatic moment, if you will, and she'll be fine. And I will like be reeling for sometimes days. Like
Yeah, you don't let it go.
I like look at her and I'm like, how does she just turn that on and turn that off? As I'm like, you know, my whole on a cellular level, sometimes I'm just wrecked afterwards. So that begs the question then, and you've helped me with this as a professional, but how do you have some tips, some tools, some tricks to help us, you know, in those moments, how do we stay in our own energetic bubble and still love and be compassionate and listen and all of that without getting just so intertwined with their emotions
Okay.
and then I think because in hindsight, like for me and so many people, I think then we compromise our own boundaries and we
Mhm.
renege on things that are important maybe to us as parents or as people, you know, as partners, and we give a part of ourselves away that we didn't mean to give away because we don't know how to like stay here.
Mhm. So there's a couple of simple things. Now, if you want to, I can go through a little bit of an energy clearing meditation and kind of creating some boundaries and things like that. So we could do that. Just a really fast and simple version is just to pause for a moment in that situation and breathe in the present moment, breathing all the way down into the bottom of the belly, really filling the body with air. And so taking a real breath, not just, but a real breath down into the bottom of the belly, just breathing in the present moment. And then as we exhale, exhaling everything that's about you.
Mhm.
And then inhaling just your presence, your focus, your maybe divine energy. And as you exhale, just letting go of your own agenda. And then I always like to do 3 breaths for some reason. That seems to be kind of the tipping point when we really relax into it. So breathing in, again, the present moment, your awareness, your ability to see the situation in a clear light, and then just letting go of any judgment, any old stuff, any of your own layers, and just being present in that moment. And then you can look at what's going on. Maybe it's a teenage broken heart, for example, and just say, how can I help you? Is there anything that you need me to do, or do you just need to be alone and process this? And be willing to give your kids space because they generally know what to do. Now, if they don't, they're going to be all, Mom, I don't know what to do, right? So generally they will reach out. Now, if they're withdrawing for too long, that's not healthy. So then there's that moment of saying, okay, so how can I support you in moving through this? My coaching cat is now present.
I was wondering
Hello.
when she was going to make her appearance.
Mhm.
Love it. What a calming energy she is. That's awesome. I think those are great, simple tips. I would love to hear, I would love for us to dive into a little bit of a meditation because I know that I've done some with you before and they've been incredibly
Mhm.
powerful. And I know that some people will really benefit from your approach to visualization and just the meditation piece. Before we dive
Mhm.
into that, I did want to ask one more question. I thought this was a really
Sure.
important question because I think this will tie into that too. But so one of my people wrote in and they were talking specifically about some real struggles they were having with, and I think you've touched on this already, but I'm just going to ask it again just because I want
Mhm.
it to be really clear and concise and in a neat little box for
Yep.
that. But she said, how do you set boundaries with sick, maybe mentally, emotionally family systems? So in particular, this client was talking about, or this person was talking about her past family, her parents, alcoholism, addiction, and she's kind of moved on and tried to really figure out how to have healthy boundaries herself and with her family. But it's this hard, like, how do you set those boundaries with those people? Um, it sounds like her family of origin, there's a lot of manipulation and there's a lot of just unhealthy things going on. Like, but then you get, it's hard because this is your family of origin, so you feel guilty. Like, and I know you've touched on that, but can you just kind of speak specifically to maybe that kind of a scenario?
Well, I would say the first thing to keep in mind is that you cannot help the unwilling. So if someone is just trying to manipulate you and get whatever response they want out of you, they're unwilling to change. And so nothing you say is ever going to make an impact. And just looking at them with love and compassion, but from that 100-foot distance, that objective observer, and just saying, I see that you want something from me, and unfortunately, you're not going to get that. And, acknowledge their pain if you need to, but I think getting a lot of acknowledgement of their pain is usually what addicts and dysfunctional people want, and they get so much of it, and it's kind of, it's an addiction, right? So I think just breathing into your own space and looking at them through the eyes of compassion without all the history, without all the garbage that's gone before, and really just saying, I see what you're trying to do here, and I can't help you because it really won't help you. What you want is not going to solve any problems. So sometimes it's a little bit of tough love and creating that bit of distance that, maybe it's like, when you're willing to have a real conversation as a normal person without an agenda and just really be real about what's going on for you, then I am here for you anytime. And until you can do that, I just don't see the point, and I'm tired of your drama. So being able to draw that boundary, and I've gone through that in my own life, and it's challenging. It's hard to do because we buy into their expectation. But the more we do that, the more we really keep them locked in that scenario, because we're giving them whatever it is that they get out of being the needy, manipulative, drama seeker that they have grown into. And the one thing that I found was helpful for me was just to look at the people in my world who were going through that, and just seeing the divine energy within them, and just seeing them at their highest level. Sorry, this must land somewhere. Having a bath and cleaning, and it's like, okay, stop. You're not being a good coaching cat today.
Yeah, I mean, how have you said you've gone through that in your own life. How have you made peace? I mean, I think that's the challenge for so many of us, is making peace with standing firm in your place and being okay with that. Because I know for me, when I've done that, I might have a bad cycle, or my hormones might be out of control, and all of a sudden I question it again. And it's like, how do we stand committed to staying firm and be at peace with saying, you know what, this is a line that I need to draw for my family right now, for where I am in my life. And unless things change, this door is sort of closed for right now.
Yeah. And I think the best thing is to not have an agenda, to not try to change them, to not have an attachment to how they respond, and just simply know for yourself and your family and for your sense of balance, you just really need to speak the truth and to look at that higher version of them, and really say, when you, as the highest version of yourself, are able to come back and have a conversation, that I would welcome. But until you can do that, until you can be real and honest and vulnerable, I'm just not going to go there.
Right.
And it's a difficult conversation, There's a book that I think is a very powerful book. It's called The Magic of Conflict, and I don't remember the author's name off the top of my head. It's a red, black, and white cover, and it's using the concept of Aikido to take other people's negative energy and redirect it in a way that works better for you. And it has a lot to do with creating boundaries and getting people to honor your boundaries even when they don't want to. And that might be a powerful tool for people who are going through this kind of a challenge.
Yeah, I love that.
If I can look up the author and maybe we can post it afterwards, but it's called The Magic of Conflict, and it's using Aikido to solve, difficult situations without having to use the physical form of Aikido. But basically it's taking aggressive energy, and instead of combating it, which is what we normally would do, we could go head to head with it. Instead of taking that momentum and trying to push it back, we instead embrace it and redirect it.
Oh, fascinating. I love that concept.
So
That's really cool.
it can be a great idea for especially dealing with people who are maybe say on the addict track and very self-sabotaging and very entitled. Well, you owe me. No, you have to give me money. Oh no, you have to take care of me. That I'm gonna die if you don't do this. It's like, okay, it was your choice. 2, it's not my responsibility. It's my pleasure to help you when I can, and right now I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And C, can never go 1, 2, 3. I don't know why that is, but it's like, this is an opportunity for you to feel your own pain and to deal with your situation in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I will hold the space for you to be able to do that, but I can't solve your problems for you. So just, being in that space and speaking your truth, I think can be a really powerful thing.
Absolutely. Well, I would love for you, because I think I know just from my own personal experience, I know one of the biggest pieces is just kind of inviting meditation and visualization into when you're struggling with boundaries, inviting that into your practice and into the process of establishing those healthy boundaries. So would you share with us a little meditation, visualization exercise that might be?
Absolutely.
Awesome. I tell you what I'm going to do, because I think there's a way, isn't there a way for me to kind of I'm going to turn off my camera. That's what I'm going to do. And I want you to be the center fold, and I might actually close my eyes and just kind of walk through this with you while you do it.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. So let's just take a moment to take a deep breath in together, and we're just going to breathe into heart center. And as we take a long, slow exhale, just letting go of all the busyness of the day. And again, taking a deep breath in, just breathing into the bottom of the belly, filling the body from the bottom of the belly all the way up to the top of the chest. And breathing in the present moment. And as we exhale again, just letting go of any old thoughts, habits, and beliefs that might be ready to release. And breathing in one more time, breathing into our center of knowingness and really energizing that area. And as we exhale, again, releasing any attachment to outcome, any judgments, any self-judgments, and just letting all that garbage go. Now, on our next in-breath, we're going to send our intention, our attention, down through the floor, down into the earth, down into the center of the earth. And we're going to keep going until we find this beautiful molten golden energy. And we're going to kind of hook that and pull a strand of that up. And don't worry if you don't see it. It doesn't matter. Just try to experience it in whatever way feels natural for you. There is no right, no wrong, and no judgment. So pulling this energy up, we're going to pull it up through the earth, through the floor, and into the soles of our feet, and pulling it up through our skeletal frame. So coming up through the feet, the legs, the hips, the torso, and then up through the top of the head, and see it kind of split into little streams that fountain down around us. And as it drops back down to the level of our feet, it can rejoin the thread that's coming up from the earth. So it kind of surrounds us with this little flowing energy ball of molten golden energy. And this earth energy, it is stable, it is ageless, it is strength and growth and just really, really groundedness. And feeling that fill out into our bodies, filling up our organs, filling our muscles, tendons, ligaments, our bones, our cells, our molecules, and the space in between the molecules. And seeing that energy circulating and healing and replenishing, filling up our energy centers and any areas that are depleted. And if there is any illness in the body, we can send this energy specifically to look for that illness and clear it out. Good. Now, as we continue to let this energy circulate, it just keeps going automatically, and we no longer need to pay attention to it. So now on our next in-breath, we are going to reach up through the crown of our head, through the ceiling, through the atmosphere, into space, and through space, until we hit this layer of kind of like milky, bluey white energy, which is the etheric layer. And when we find this energy, it feels cool and refreshing, and it smells like peppermint. And we're going to hook some of this pearly, sparkly, blue-white energy and pull it down, pulling it down through space, through the atmosphere, through the ceiling, and in through the crown of our head, coming down through the center of our body, kind of weaving it around the molten golden energy, not blending with, more like two scarves tumbling in a dryer, and bringing it out through the soles of the feet where it can fountain back up and rejoin again at the crown of the head. And feeling this refreshing, vibrant, sparkling, pepperminty energy that brings energy into every part of our body. It brings intuition, it brings empowerment, it brings knowledge and deep understanding. It brings compassion and a knowledge of when to use it. So this deep inner knowing just floods into our body, floating out through our skeletal and muscular and nerve structures and into our cells, our molecules, and the space in between the molecules. So we are completely filled with this sparkly, pearly blue-white light. And yet also completely filled with the molten golden energy. And just continuing to breathe nice and deep and letting those energies do what they need to do to bring everything back into balance. Let's take a little moment to think about some of the scenarios in our life where we'd like to have some boundaries, where we'd like to feel a little bit more safe in our own space, where we'd like to feel a little less at the whim of others. And really bring some of those scenarios up and let them play through in a way where you feel strong and grounded and powerful and compassionate, but wise. And watch yourself kind of deal with some of these situations in a way that maybe you never have before. And you can continue to do that. And in the meantime, we're going to press the place where these energy flows meet at the bottom of the feet And we're going to press it out about a foot or two away from the bottom of your feet so that it's more rounded, but the energy is still coming in. It's still doing exactly what it needs to do. And we'll do the same thing at the crown of the head and pressing that up and away about a foot or two over your head so that we're now completely inside of an energy bubble. And I'm going to bring in these crazy little scrubbing bubbles. They come in rainbow colors. They're all different sizes, and they're very happy, and they giggle a lot. And they're going to run around the inside of your energy bubble and clear off any residue, any old energy, any old thoughts, habits, beliefs that are just kind of sticking there. And they're just going to clear that energy field so it's sparkling and shiny and perfectly clean. And so we don't have to pay attention to them. We just know they're there. And shockingly, a couple of them, or maybe a whole lot of them, have popped to the outside of your energy bubble and are doing the same thing there. And so as we continue breathing and just pay attention to those situations in which you would like to create some boundaries and really feeling into how it feels and how you can tell when you're pushing too hard and how to tell when you're crumbling under pressure, and how to really walk into that space of wisdom that knows the difference, that balancing point between the two, between too hard and too soft, between too selfless and too selfish, between being a caregiver and being a slave. Finding that balancing point where your soul feels completely content, and playing through these scenarios until they start to feel more balanced. And you can continue with that. In the meantime, we're going to go to the outside of your energy bubble, and these scrubbing bubbles are going to put down this molten silver layer. It's kind of slick and metallic-y, and it kind of looks like old school mercury in a thermometer, only not toxic. And we're going to coat the outside of your energy bubble with this shiny, slick silver energy. And it is topped with kind of a layer of iridescent oil. And the interesting thing is, as we put this layer of silver energy down, we're clearing off all energetic attachments that are draining your energy. Whether they are there with or without your permission, you will be able to bring back any that you choose to have. But we're going to clear them all out so you can be fully in your own energy for a moment. And so these scrubbers are putting down the silver and the oil slick surface and sending all these energy tendrils back to where they came from. And some came from you, and so those simply go inside and rejoin your energy field. And some came from others, and they are very gently returned. And now the scrubbers on the inside of your energy bubble are putting in this bright pink. They're putting this bright pink layer along the whole inside of your energy bubble, and this is acceptance and self-love. This is the part that knows that you are deserving of being taken care of. You are deserving of being on your list. You are deserving of having some alone time and some girl time and some pamper time, and that you will always know when enough is enough and when too much is too much. And you'll also be very aware of when it's not enough. So bringing in this very bright pink energy and just allowing that to coat the inside of your energy bubble. Good. And now let's just kind of bring this grid of shiny, almost like crystals, down from the crown of the head through your energy bubble and your image of yourself. And as this crystalline grid comes down, it's basically just bringing out all the old habits and beliefs and just scattering them away. And they fall to the ground like dust or sand, and they just fall away. And just allowing this to refine your energy, your knowledge, your knowingness, and bring you into true alignment with yourself and your soul's purpose. Okay. And so now we're going to kind of bring the energy trickles from the earth and the etheric layer, just bring them down to a very small amount. We're going to leave them in place because I feel like everyone needs to be recharged right now. And just know if there are energetic attachments that you want to keep, all you need to do is reach out and reestablish them. But just know that they are not necessary for your connection, your communication, your empathy, or any other thing. They actually serve no useful purpose except to drain you. So right now you are fully clear in your own energy field. I highly recommend staying in that state, but it is up to each individual what they choose to have. And now bringing in this beautiful white light coming in through the crown of the head, through the top of the energy field, and basically filling the whole energy bubble and every molecule of you with beautiful white light. And then seeing that flow through your energy bubble and flowing out from you, in front of you, behind you, to the right, to the left, above and below, into infinity. And that white light is just locking in the work that we've done. Good. And now just taking a deep breath in, coming back into the moment, coming back into the room, and returning to this space and time. And we are complete with that.
Oh my gosh, that is so amazing. You are so talented. And I feel like a sense of protection and definitely enhanced energy just from walking through that with you. You know, it's just so powerful. Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your expertise with us. I think there's just so many, probably could split this into 3 or 4 different sections. I could probably keep going too. Like, oh, there's still a couple questions I didn't ask, but I think we could, you know, take it. There's just so many great nuggets of information in here. And I know that what you've shared will resonate with so many of the people that are in my Facebook group or on my email list or that are clients of mine. So thank you for taking your time to do this.
Of course, happy to do it, and I hope it was helpful for people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording and then you and I will chat just a little bit more.